Well, welcome everybody tuning in on youtube.com or Facebook live stream. This is Rich Tran, the mayor of Milpitas, and you're watching the special city council meeting here on Tuesday, September the 28th, 2021. Looks like we got one agenda item tonight. We're going to knock it out. We're going to do great, and we're going to move this city forward. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to attend this meeting, either in person or digitally or virtually. And we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we'll go to our city clerk, Wendy Wood, for the roll call.
Councilmember Chua? Councilmember Chua is here. Councilmember Dominguez? Councilmember Fan?
Present.
Councilmember Fan is here. Vice Mayor Montano? Here. Vice Mayor Montano is here. Mayor Tran?
Here. Thank you very much, Wendy. Next up on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And we'll move forward to approval of agenda. It looks good to me. I move to approve the agenda. Looking for a second. Need a second. We have a second from Councilmember Chua, and we'll go down the line for the vote. Councilmember Chua. Councilmember Dominguez.
Aye.
Councilmember Fan. Councilmember Fan.
Aye.
That's an aye, and we'll go to the vice mayor. And it's aye from the vice mayor. Myself is an aye. The agenda is approved. I want to kindly ask my colleagues on the dais, if your microphone is on, please turn it off. If your microphone is on, I'm unable to go to the next person. Thank you very much. And moving on to announcement of conflict of interest, we'll go to our city attorney tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Ethan Walsh, sitting in for Chris Diaz tonight on this item. And I would ask the mayor and members of the council, does any member of the council have a financial interest or interest in real property that would give rise to a conflict of interest?
And we'll go down the line here one at a time. Councilmember Chua. So let me trying to get your microphone here. Oh, you know.
No.
Okay, there it is. That's my fault, Councilmember Chua, for the microphone. I fixed it. Thank you. All right, next up here for the conflict of interest, we got Councilmember Dominguez.
No.
Councilmember Fan.
None.
Vice Mayor Montano.
None.
Myself is none. Back to you, City Attorney. Any other comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Let the record reflect that none of the council has a conflict of interest on the item before us tonight.
Thank you very much. And thanks for being here with us tonight. Next up is the public forum. Folks, you know the drill. Now is the time for public comment. Here in the public forum, if you'd like to make a comment about anything, now would be the time. However, if you're here for the agenda item, it would benefit you for us to get to number one here, and then you can comment in the proper discussion. But it is the public forum. I want to recognize the public forum. Looking in the chamber for anybody for the public forum piece. I see no requests. We'll go digitally. We got some attendees here tonight on the Zoom. Folks, if you're tuning in for the first time, you're able to participate virtually through the Zoom platform. If you go to the City of Milpitas website, pull up tonight's city council meeting agenda, there should be a link on there accessible for you to join us on the Zoom webinar. We have several folks here I see on the attendees on the Zoom. If there's any requests for public forum comment, looking for any virtual raised hands, or otherwise we'll go to agenda item number one. Okay, public forum, no further requests for comment going once, going twice, and we'll move forward here. We'll do 2 minutes tonight for comments. Since no one's spoken yet, I want to open up a little more time for folks that are here for agenda item number one. receive staff presentation and provide direction on guiding principles for 3 city-owned parcels at 1432 to 1488 South Main Street. We'll direct staff possibly to bring back a recommended approach that aligns with the adopted guiding principles. And so I do want to go now to our city manager, Steve McHarris, to take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor Tran, members of the council. That is true. We have this one item tonight. It is really somewhat of a study session for you. And this item was important enough to have a special meeting. And that's why we're doing it with just a single item. We do have housing staff to give you the presentation. And you will note that in the recommendations, this isn't to tackle everything to do with developing properties out there or disposing of properties. We're referring to the 3 properties on Main Street, but it is to provide staff with some guiding principles in which we can bring back further information. So you won't be making entire decisions tonight, but you're definitely directing staff with direction. So appreciate that. So I'll turn it over. Is Sharon going to lead us? Sharon Goey, Director?
Steve, I'm gonna kick it off.
Shwini, thank you, Shwini. Assistant City Manager, Shwini Contact.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. We're really pleased to be here this evening to kick off the discussion regarding the 3 parcels on South Main Street, as Steve mentioned. We've had an interdepartmental team working on this for several months with Sharon Goey, our Building Safety and Housing Director, and Adam Marcus, our Housing Manager, taking the lead. We've also had several other staff involved, including Robert Mussolum, Ned Thomas, Alex Andrade, Albert Zamora, Steve Erickson, and Renee Lawrenson. Ethan Walsh from BB&K has been providing us legal guidance on this, and he's here today to provide guidance and respond to council questions, legal questions. And we also have Libby Seifel, a housing consultant, who's been providing us with assistance. And more recently, we hired Ramey and Associates. They're doing some work on objective design standards for us for citywide, but they're also helping us with some work to better understand the development potential of these parcels. And through the staff report and presentation tonight, it will become clear that there are many issues to consider on the disposition of these parcels. There are several possible pathways and options before us, and each option actually comes with pros and cons when taken in the context of the legal and timing constraints. And thus tonight, as Steve mentioned, our objective is to make sure we're able to communicate the background and constraints very clearly and to walk you through some potential options along with their trade-offs. We're not seeking direction on any particular option. And instead, we have proposed guiding principles for parcel 1 as well as parcels 2 and 3, and are seeking your input and approval of these guiding principles. We're then asking for direction to come back to you with a recommended option and possibly some alternatives based on these adopted guiding principles. And the disposition of these parcels, as you'll see, presents a really unique and exciting opportunity for the city to actively shape a part of the revitalization of Main Street. And it is our goal to make sure we present all of the relevant information and bring forward well thought out recommendations based on careful analysis, as well as proactive outreach to the development community, some of which we've done, and you'll hear about it more in tonight's presentation, as well as outreach to the general Milpitas community at large. And this is to enable you to make informed decisions and provide us direction throughout the process. And so with that, I'll hand it off to Sharon Goey, our Building Safety and Housing Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwini. Good afternoon and almost good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and members of the community. As mentioned, we'll be discussing the South Main Street parcels that the city owns. So please go to the next slide. So this is a quick agenda for tonight's meeting. First, we'll review the background and legal constraints and legal requirements. Then we'll take a virtual site tour and look at nearby development activities. Then we'll go over key city policies and land use policies, including the upcoming metro-specific plan. Following that, we'll review some pathways of development at a high level, and then we'll be looking at proposed guiding principles for these parcels and discuss those with City Council and get your feedback. And then we'll review an approximate timeline for these parcels. Next slide, please. Okay. So here's kind of a larger site map. So the 3 parcels are located on South Main Street, just north of Cedar Way, and that's the yellow box you see on the screen. The sites are just a short walk from VTA Light Rail Station, the Gray Mall, and the Milpitas BART Transit Center. The Pine single-family neighborhood sits to the west of these parcels. The railroad tracks, they run along the eastern edge of the parcels, and that's the red dashed line you see on the screen. And high-density housing has been proposed to the north and south of the city's parcels. Next slide, please. Here's a zoomed-in view of the parcels. Parcel 1 was transferred from the City Milpitas Housing Authority by the former redevelopment agency. And as you can see there, it's just below 1 acre, and it's south of Caliber Collision. And parcels 2 and 3, they're owned by the city. And you can see the acreage there. One is 0.87, the other is 0.85 acres. And they're just north of the Senior Lifestyles Phase 2 development. Next slide, please. And for background, these 3 parcels were assembled during the redevelopment agency days around 2011 with the purpose of aggregating land for higher density affordable or mixed income housing. And as we mentioned, parcel 1 is owned by the Milpitas Housing Authority. It was acquired previously by the redevelopment agency with funding from the Low and Moderate Income Housing Asset Fund. Parcels 2 and 3 were transferred to the successor agency and then later purchased by the city using general fund money. And together, these parcels present a unique opportunity to develop and shape 2.71 acres of transit-oriented development. And this also comes with some challenges as well. Next slide, please. Okay. So for legal constraints, there are a few important ones to consider for these parcels. Parcel 1 is subject to the redevelopment agency law, and at a minimum, it must be developed or disposed of by August 31st, 2022. If this parcel is developed separately, it must include 100% affordable housing. If it is sold, it can be developed as market rate housing, and the proceeds must go into the Housing Authority Fund for affordable housing purposes. For parcels 2 and 3, they will be subject to the Surplus Land Act. And this Surplus Land Act obligates the city to post a notice of availability and to negotiate in good faith for 90 days on offers to build affordable or mixed income housing. So the Surplus Land Act does add some time to the disposition process. And priority would be required for proposals with 25% affordable units. If no agreement is reached under the Surplus Land Act, a residential project would still need a minimum of 15% affordable units for low-income households. There's no state mandate to develop or dispose of parcels 2 and 3, but there could be some benefits if they're developed and considered together with parcel 1. Next slide, please. Okay. So in this next several slides, we're going to take a quick virtual tour and look at some street views of the parcels and the nearby area. So on this slide, you can see this is parcel 1, and currently they're occupied, the sites are occupied with single-story commercial uses that include auto repairs such as automotive, and M&B Plumbing, Cat Boarding Place, the Milpitas Food Pantry, and Silicon Valley Lock, which is a locksmith. And north of parcel 1 is Caliber Collision, as we mentioned. That's not a city-owned parcel, and on the photograph that's on the upper portion of the slide, that's just to the left of the building. Next slide, please. Okay. So parcel 2 consists of mainly auto repair uses. We have Outertainment, Dominic's Auto Service, M&G Motor Works, GP Motor Works on this parcel. Next slide, please. Parcel 3 also consists of auto repair users. Liberty's Auto Electric is on this parcel, and the nearby, the building in the rear, it's vacant currently. And south of Parcel 3 is Senior Lifestyles Phase 2 development. Just to the right of the picture, in the upper picture, you can see there that's, it's just dirt right now, but that's what's being planned is Phase 2 of Senior Lifestyles. So there will be opportunity too to possibly collaborate on emergency access between the parcels. Next slide, please. Now looking north on South Main Street toward the Great Mall and the light rail station, you can see the Pines neighborhood across the street to the west, the Ilara apartments to the north, and also the fully entitled Mill on Main project that will be to the north as well. Next slide, please. And here's a rendering of the Mill on Main project that was entitled for 220 units in a 7-story building. Next slide, please. This photo shows the vacant lot that's south of Parcel 3. It is owned by the same developer as Westmont, pictured here just across Cedar Way. Westmont is also known as Senior Lifestyles. And this Phase 1 is the building you see there. It's a mixed income senior housing project. And the city has a disposition and development agreement on this vacant parcel to the north of Cedar Way. That's what you see on the left over there. And we anticipate higher density housing development at that site. So next, I'm going to hand this over to Adam Marcus, our housing manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, and the public. Next slide, please. We wanted to talk a little bit about some of the key city policies that might influence or be related to the decision on sort of what to do with these parcels. And we put together 3 of them. So the first one comes from the current Task Metro specific plan. And that has a goal of helping to create a vibrant transit-oriented community that includes housing, retail, entertainment, commercial and park spaces, and a safe and attractive pedestrian and bicycle network. In addition, our current housing element, which is a chapter in our general plan, calls for supporting the development of a diverse range of housing types, including rental and ownership units, housing affordable to all segments of the community, and housing for individuals with special housing needs. Development of this site as multifamily housing would help meet future regional housing needs allocation goals. And finally, another policy from the general plan is to encourage new development in key opportunity areas that provide high quality work environments and competitive business locations. Next slide, please. And this is a snapshot of some of the land use vision for the site. This is from the Metro or the draft Metro specific plan. Currently, the parcels are in the Midtown Gateway specific plan. However, staff intends to annex them into the Metro specific plan later this year, subject to council approval. And again, so this slide assumes what the vision would be per the Metro specific plan. And the main difference is really the density. And the density would be increased from about 40 to 60 units to the acre housing units to 70 to 120 housing units to the acre. And the study that we asked Ramey to do and that we'll present in a few minutes assumes the higher density that is pictured here in this slide. Next slide, please. So given some of the legal constraints that are associated with these properties, the staff has developed 2 general pathways for development or disposition. And so the first pathway looks at separating parcel number 1, which is the northernmost parcel, from parcels 2 and 3. And you can see the size of those parcels down below. And the second pathway would combine all 3 parcels. And that would allow for certain efficiencies and allow for some creativity and a larger sort of more room to work with. In the coming slides, we'll walk through each pathway in a little bit more detail. Again, we aren't asking you to decide on one of these tonight. We're just wanting to present with you some of the trade-offs and sort of illustrate them through these two pathways. Next slide. So the first one is pathway 1A. So again, that would be separating the first parcel and selling it. That would allow the city to maintain ownership of the larger site, which is parcels 2 and 3. It would separate out the legal constraints that were mentioned earlier for parcel 1, which is having to develop or dispose of it by August of next year, but also the Surplus Land Act, which adds additional time to the process. So it keeps those separate. Once sold, parcel number 1 could be market rate housing, but the proceeds of that sale would need to go into the Affordable Housing Fund, either for housing on sites 2 and 3 or elsewhere in the city. A land sale would also allow for homeownership housing. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but in general, a land lease is not compatible with homeownership housing. And finally, this would assume 2 independent development projects. Next slide. So pathway 1B would be similar, separating parcel 1 out, but instead of selling parcel 1, the city could lease it. And that would maintain city ownership for all of the parcels. It would also separate the legal constraints. As I mentioned in the prior slide, parcel 1 would have to be developed as 100% affordable housing if the city holds on to it. And it would have to be all rental housing, because again, if you were to have retain ownership and lease the land, that would make home ownership very, very difficult. And again, these could be developed as 2 separate projects, but they could be planned together in concert. Next slide. And finally, pathway number 2, which would be to combine all the parcels and form some other combination of leasing or selling them, and being a little more creative with how the parcel is divided up in terms of the parcel lines. This would allow for creative master planning and flexibility, some efficiencies and economies of scale, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it would be more complex because we'd be combining all the legal constraints in terms of having to do this by August of next year, and also having to take a sort of a slower process with the Surplus Lands Act, which adds some time, as Sharon mentioned. And you could meet some of the redevelopment agency affordability requirements. They could be blended into the project, but there would be certain requirements that would have to be met. And this would assume 1 master project, but that could involve a developer team of both a for-profit and a nonprofit developer. Next slide. And the next 2 slides summarize what we heard from our colleagues at Ramey and Associates of the architecture and planning firm. So they helped us understand, well, how many housing units can fit on these 3 parcels of land. And so when you look at the images on the right, we have parcel number 1 at the top. They're divided by the red lines, the dotted lines, and parcels 2 and 3 are combined together. So there's really no line between 2 and 3. They're just one larger site for the purposes of this study. And so what this slide shows is how, if you were to separate parcel 1 from parcels 2 and 3, what the difference in housing capacity might be. And it really wasn't that much. So if you were to sell parcel 1, you could put approximately 90 units on there. And then about 170 units could fit on parcels 2 and 3, adding up to about 260 units. If you were to reserve some of that land for a small park or urban plaza, that would reduce the amount of units you could place on the site at just about 250 units. So again, by adding the park space, you would lose a little bit of capacity. Next slide. This set of images shows how much housing could be placed on the site if it was combined as one. And again, you can see that if you combine them all together without a park, it would be about 270 units. If you did reserve some space for a park and also for a small amount of retail fronting the park, which is something our Ramey thought would be a good kind of urban design choice, then you would have a little bit less room for the housing, and it would be closer to 260 units. So the main takeaway so far from this is that there really isn't a huge difference in how much housing you can fit on the site if you separate it or combine it. But probably there's more of a difference if you set aside some room for park space or retail. Next slide. We did do a community development roundtable earlier this month with affordable and market rate housing developers and real estate professionals. It was well attended. And some of the attendees included the core companies, Senior Lifestyles, Pacific Communities, James Sullivan Land Development, Jamboree Housing, Bridge Housing, Eden Housing, Midpen Housing, Charities Housing, and SV at Home. So we did have quite a nice variety of attendees, and we got really good feedback. Some of the affordable housing developers thought it would be easier to finance a small standalone affordable project on parcel number 1 because the size of the project would be just right for competitive tax credits. And some said it would be more efficient to master plan the site with 2 developer partners, a 100% affordable project and a separate mixed income project with market rate units. Some developers preferred combining the parcels because it would allow flexibility for creative site planning and economies of scale or efficiencies. So some examples of that would be only having to do one entitlement process, being able to share the parking in one location, sharing emergency access or roads that have to serve the new buildings, and more. Next slide. We also heard from that for-profit developers may be less interested in a project that has a ground lease, but nonprofit developers were experienced and still quite interested in doing projects with ground leases. There was a question asked if the city was considering housing for first-time homebuyers. Another comment was that leased land is not compatible with homeownership projects. There was a comment about the concern about locating housing adjacent to Caliber Collision, which is an active automobile repair use, and that there may be some concerns there. And the city, and generally there was a lot of interest in the sites, and that, once the city determines what it wants, developers were quite interested in partnering with the city on creative solutions. Next slide. Just a quick note on the land lease versus sale. So there are some pros and cons to leasing or selling these parcels. A lease does provide the city with long-term control over the land. It allows the city to collect rent and ensure affordability for 55 years and beyond. However, a land lease is not compatible with homeownership housing, and there may be fewer developers that are interested in pursuing a development on leased land. Next slide. We're almost done here. So here we'd like to just kind of summarize some of the guiding principles that you might consider as you think about that today. So for parcel number 1, again, this is the redevelopment agency owned site at the very north of the property. For that site, it's very important that we dispose of the parcel in a way where we meet the legal requirements that are required, that we meet the timeline and the affordability restrictions that are associated with that piece of land. We also might consider developing higher density housing per the land use vision for the Metro specific plan as transit oriented development near the VTA and BART station. Developing 100% affordable housing either on the parcel or selling it and using the funds to support other affordable housing is also something to consider. And that would need to be for, if it was developed on that parcel number 1, it would need to be 80% area median income affordable and below. Another thought is allowing flexibility for affordable units to be rental or ownership. And thinking of ways to leverage parcels 2 and 3, for example, when thinking about emergency access and roads and alleyways for the fire department and other emergency access. Next slide. And for parcels 2 and 3, it's similar, but a little bit different. So again, with parcels 2 and 3, you might consider retaining the land ownership with a ground lease. It's a larger site. Developing the parcels, of course, in accordance with the Surplus Lands Act and making sure that that process is followed. Disposing and developing of parcels to maximize the city's return on investment. Creating a mix of higher density housing, affordable and market rate housing, and potentially providing a new neighborhood serving retail in a small park or plaza. Next slide. And this slide just brings it all together in one place, what I just went over. And next slide. So with that all in mind, this is a tentative timeline. After the City Council receives this staff presentation and provides direction on guiding principles, city staff can schedule a community meeting to gather additional input. In the fall, staff can bring back a recommended approach that aligns with the adopted guiding principles for the development or disposition of these parcels. And once this approach is approved by council, staff would then move forward in accordance with that direction. And again, August, just a reminder, August of 2022 is the deadline for developing or disposing of parcel number 1. And our last slide for the night. Next slide. So with that, we'll leave you with our recommendation, which is to provide direction on these guiding principles for all 3 of the city-owned sites on South Main Street, and direct staff to bring back a recommended approach that aligns with the adopted guiding principles. And with that, we're here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. I really appreciate your presentation. Just in time. All right, let's go to public comment. We have folks here tonight for agenda item number 1 here at Milpitas City Hall in the chamber of the City Council. I want to invite our, I see members of the public here, familiar faces actually. If you're here to speak, I want to invite you up right now if that's okay, if you'd like to speak, or if you're here just for some information, that's okay too. All are welcome. But this would be the public comment time, and I would love for folks to utilize it. Okay. I will go virtually, I'm going to go virtually now. I don't see anybody in the chamber with the request for public comment. And to our city clerk, if we can do 2 minutes tonight. No one's spoken yet, so we have a fresh start with the comments. Just want to provide a great night here with comments. And we'll go virtually here for public comment. We have attendees. Thanks for joining us, folks, here tonight, wherever you're at in the city of Milpitas or beyond. I do see some residents of the Pines attending as well. I'm not going to put you on blast and say your name, but thanks for being here with us tonight, Pineside family. All right, first with the virtual raised hand, we have Kristen Renfro. Welcome.
Can you hear me now?
Welcome.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Sorry, it looked like I was muted momentarily. City Council members and Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to provide comment. My name is Kristen Renfro. I am an attorney located in Sacramento, and I am working with and representing a few of the tenants of these properties: Abbott Auto Service, the Cat's Nest, Disruptive Rides, Silicon Valley Lockmasters, M&G Motorworks, and Liberty's Auto Electric. I wasn't able to submit any comment in advance of this meeting because I only learned of it today, after the noon hour, when I was alerted that a flyer was dropped off today to one of the tenants. We weren't aware of the recent meeting that's noted in the staff report about a roundtable with developers. And we were not aware that over the past number of months, the city had picked up a planning process here, including I see a reference to the fact that the city has retained a consultant to study possible relocation options. I myself had some communication with counsel for the city. Probably been a year ago now that we last had communication, and it took a good 9 months after we had initially reached out to try to get some information about the city's plans to get a substantive response. That at that time, in September of 2020, there was nothing going on and no immediate concerns about the tenants being displaced. I'm here to respectfully ask that the tenants be looped into this process, that they be notified when there are meetings concerning the disposition of these properties that impact greatly their businesses, their livelihood. They need to know what the city.
Give you another minute. Keep going. Yeah, I'll give you another minute since you're the first.
Oh, I appreciate it. On my screen, it wasn't showing the time, and it still shows.
You good. Keep going. Yeah.
Anyhow.
Matter of fact, you know what? We'll give you 5 full minutes because you're the first one. We'll set that as a standard tonight. Okay, keep going.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, the basic point is we want to be involved. And I think that the tenants deserve not to be kept in the dark as the planning process is going forward. Obviously, the city has objectives and options that it's considering. And we're well aware of the goals that the city has, options that it is considering pursuing. But to have some basic understanding of the timing and to be looped into discussions about relocation options, what support will be available to the tenants and what kind of a time frame they might need to plan on. Some of these tenants, I believe Liberties has been at its current location there for approximately 50 years. Most of the tenants in excess of 20 years. They are longstanding businesses. They are good people. They are, hanging by a thread post-pandemic lockdown times that have been obviously very challenging for businesses across the state and the country. But they're there and they are really hoping that the city is going to bring them back into discussions and talk to them about what the options are going forward. We're here. We want to talk about what those are. We want to be involved in the process. And my purpose for appearing tonight is really to implore the city not to shut us out of the discussions. I don't know what the reason is that there hasn't been any communication over the past months with the tenants to let them know what's going on and maybe what to expect, what their role can be in this process. But I would ask that going forward, they receive notices when there are going to be consequential meetings about planning, when there's going to be information shared. And I would hope that we can reestablish a direct line of communication and one where the tenants are allowed to be active participants in the planning process, given that they are going to be so greatly impacted by the change in the use of the properties going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And we're doing public comment tonight for this agenda item, one agenda item, and it's 5 minutes a person. We want to really show how much we value folks that are here for this agenda item. All right, back to the Zoom. I'm looking for any further virtual raised hands. Would love to hear from you folks tuning in wherever you're at in the cloud. If not, I'll bring the discussion back up to the dais. Rose, is that you over here? How you doing? I haven't seen you all. I miss you. Okay, great. Steve? Yeah, how you doing? Hey, got the Milpitas family here tonight, and we are here now. This is a day that we all saw coming. It's been really quite an honor, and I'm humbled to be on this journey with our community members, really for a number of years now. And my commitment still remains to doing, sort of the things we talked about and the right things to support folks that are going to be impacted, like Kristen said. I want to pause myself there. I see a virtual raised hand. I want to go back. We'll go with Guy Haas with public comment. And 5 minutes. We'll just get your microphone unmute. Welcome. Yes.
I unmuted and it said the host had muted me. So
You're here.
okay. Here in the Pines, we keep losing our view of the hillsides. They put up 4- and 5-story and now 6-story buildings, and this is disturbing. But there's other things. The Pines has also been afflicted with parking, people coming in from neighboring properties and parking in the Pines on public roadways. So we've been in the process of trying to get some sort of metered parking or resident-only parking. Another thing is park space. Every time you put up new buildings, they put up buildings and then they put money into a park fund and don't provide park space, which means that people who live in the adjacent properties come in and use Pinewood Park. That's a bummer. The food pantry is an important institution in Milpitas, and it would be in one of these properties. And I would like them to be more integrated into the discussion and more advised of what their opportunities are. I was really glad to see Kristen Renfro in there talking on behalf of the tenants. I was just in at Liberty's today and brought Steve into the loop to talk about what was going on tonight. So I'd like the discussion to address all those things. And I think at some point in the October meeting, we need to have a more intensive discussion about them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haas. Talk about community. That's what we got here with our community members that have tuned in tonight. That's fantastic. I bring the conversation back up here to the dais. I don't know where to start. It's kind of so many emotions with the community that is there at the city property. And a number of us have been working alongside our business owners and also residents to really understand the reality that we're going to be, I think, living in terms of the decisions. You see speaking to a lot of folks here in the chamber and at home, you see a lot of, you see the deadline here, year 2022. So that is the deadline that we are really up against. That's kind of the last day, but I'm sure that I have a feeling there's going to be other actions with possible real estate transactions, maybe several months prior to that deadline. So I'll officially say it. I think everybody there is on the clock, all the tenants. The Milpitas Food Pantry, just talk about some tenants. I think we'll find them a home here. There is no Milpitas without the Milpitas Food Pantry, and I'm 100% confident we'll find the food pantry a new home. It'll be the third one that I know of for the food pantry. Now to the tenants, I'll use Liberty's as really a shining example. A Milpitas small business, family owned, that's been around since the 1950s, and I think our community really has the heart, and I think there's tons of support in City Hall. And I would look forward to meeting with business owners there to determine, and I think Kristen as well, to determine, to have a discussion to determine what kind of support we can give. And it's going to be an honest and fair and righteous and just support. Tonight, I can't tell you what that support is. And I think it would be more efficient with our time if we met. I just want to let folks know, the tenants, I care so much about our small businesses there and just the history and all the families that have been served. So tonight, I want to commit myself to Rose and Steve and all the folks over there that we're going to meet, and we're going to do what's right and our best. And so I look forward to meeting to determine that. back to the real estate itself, it's pretty interesting. I really feel that our city should never sell a piece of property. I just think it's so valuable. But, having this item being as complex as it is, I think what's best for the city is if we maximize the value there at that property. And when I say maximize the value, I mean like the usefulness. How many people can each of those parcels or every square foot of all parcels combined, how can we most make sure every square foot over there supports the most community members as possible? And I think what we're looking at tonight with some of the options, possibly and perhaps selling all 3 parcels to use those funds to benefit our residents, can really be a decision that's made. I know staff's taking notes. This is pretty cool. I like combining all 3 parcels. I think that'll maximize the value in terms of selling it. One option would be to sell it for an 100% affordable housing developer, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit, as long as they're building 100% affordable housing. That's an option. I do want to make sure that there's a open space like we've seen in one of the slides. Parking. Parking is going to be a huge concern. Bringing development there at that location. Thank goodness we had the foresight to spend a lot of time on the Pines parking permit program. If we remember that, well, that'll come in handy right now over on Cedar. That's another benefit. The city has been ahead of things, for lack of better words. The city's been ahead of things. So we've already done so much work with the Pines parking permit program, which, no pun intended, has been parked for a while, but we can get that thing out of park, shift it over to drive when the time's appropriate. I know funding for that program has been sort of a challenge or a journey, but any possible developer fees for this location can really maybe pick up that tab, but who am I? I think selling the land would be great. I think if the city looks forward to developing it and playing a integral role in developing it, I don't think that's the most efficient way for something to be done there. Or else we would have done it already, right? So yeah, selling it. That's my recommendation as one person, and we'll go down the line very shortly here. But there's so many opportunities that we can have. I think a portion of it will be for affordable housing funds, and we can explore that. And then I think the other portion of it would be sort of a revenue that's not so tied into a type of use. And our city can do a lot with those dollars. We can pay off debt. We can explore putting that money into other capital projects. I know Vice Mayor Carmen Montano has been really exploring more than anybody else I know, a museum location, possible locations around town. The Vice Mayor has been advocating for softball fields. And the Vice Mayor has been working on revitalizing Main Street. And so the revenues from the sale of this land could possibly purchase other locations where we can make public spaces, from what I've discussed with the Vice Mayor. So that being said, that's my segue. I want to kind of keep it there because we're not going to solve everything in one meeting tonight. So we're going to go down the line here to my right. If we may, the Vice Mayor, Carmen Montano.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to ask staff, I know a little bit of information on this roundtable, community roundtable. So you did mention that community development roundtable That was held on September 16th. But I was curious, you did mention, you did list the folks that were there. But I was curious, were other developers invited to this roundtable?
Thanks for the question, Vice Mayor. Yes, as part of the Community Development Roundtable, the invitation was sent to a large number of developers and real estate professionals. I don't have the exact number, perhaps Alex has it if he's on, but more people were invited than attended. And it was.
And the reason why I asked is because at one point, Robson Homes had indicated that he would love to build affordable housing, and I'm not sure if that has changed, but I was wondering, was he there? Or his?
I don't believe
His
Robson
company?
was attended the meeting, no.
He was.
Did you have anything else to say on that?
No, if I answered your question, that's all I had to say.
Okay.
Adam, I could speak to that a little bit, Vice
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Just that we do have a master list of developers that are invited to that roundtable, and it is a fairly regularly occurring meeting, although it didn't meet as regularly during COVID. But we do have some meetings, and this meeting was sent out to that list, and of those, unless staff is telling me something different, that's the same list as all the other developer roundtable meetings.
Yeah.
So what Adam's referring to is those that actually attended, but they were all notified. And then they also receive any information that follows up after those meetings that's agreed upon by really consensus and direction at that roundtable.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to just see it just contained to limited nonprofits. I'd like to see this also mentioned to other developers.
It sounds good. We have 139
And
companies and individuals signed up on that roundtable list.
and these developers, I'm hoping that they're local, because we're really, the way this council wants more local developers that contribute to the local economy. So that's for me, that's my preference, local developers that know our community. And the other questions that I had. So I know that the main thing are the legal and timing constraints. So do these have, so these parcels, I'm not sure, did you say that we can do it all at once or we could piecemeal it? I know you said we can piecemeal, but after a while, you're getting confused with this one you can do this one you can, okay.
Yeah.
So
Staff, I believe the Vice Mayor is asking me, and I know staff can answer this question too, but there are a variety of ways to address these parcels. They could be done separately, they could be packaged together, they could be leased, or they could be sold. And the reports just kind of lays out the various options and just looking for general guidance or really specific guidance from the council. And then we would take that back in terms of a framework and bring back a recommendation to you.
And I did notice that we can't, it's not recommended that it be for home ownership, but do you have something like rent to own? Can that be a consideration? Because, studies have shown that when people own their home, it makes a huge difference on society. It's not just tenants coming and going, they're there for the long haul. And, me personally, I would like to see home ownership. And if you can also describe the history of the redevelopment agency, because a lot of folks don't know about redevelopment agency, how it came about, but I would have liked to have had that in the very beginning of this meeting so people would know the history of it and how it came about and why cities were forced to sell the properties. And, so that, to me, that's important, that people need to know the rationale and then why we are here today and we have to sell it, but we have to decide by August 31st, 2022 of what to do with these parcels. And then I know that these folks, the tenants, they've been there from the very beginning, even before it was part of the redevelopment agency, from my understanding. So those are my questions and thoughts.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Montano, and I agree with you. I think we're going to meet about this item, well, I think a number of times, so we can go over the whole redevelopment agency next chance. I know we touched on it a bit tonight, but we can talk about a little more of the history because I know how important that is. So thank you very much. We're going down the dais one by one here, and I'm going to go in order of the chairs here. Next up, we have Council Member Fan.
Thank you. So, in regards to the next steps in terms of sale and disposition or potential sale and disposition, how does that process look like? Is that something where we receive, we issue RFQs or RFPs?
Thank you, Council Member. I'm going to ask Ethan Walsh, the attorney, to answer that question.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Pham. It kind of depends on what direction you decide to take. With regard to the parcel one, which is the parcel that's owned by the housing authority. If you decided that you just wanted to sell it, then you would essentially put it up for sale and then you'd sell it to a private investor or developer to do what they want with it. And there's no specific process that would be related to that. The other two parcels, there's some requirements that staff mentioned at the start related to complying with the Surplus Lands Act, where you have to kind of announce it as being available for sale, that the city is selling that land off. What we have been thinking about is trying to comply with the state requirements, but kind of combining that with a request for proposals so we can go out and give the community a little more specificity as to what we're looking for. And that's part of why we were looking for direction from council, as kind of the overarching principles, so we can start to kind of develop something like that if that's the direction that you want to go.
Sure. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and that's really helpful. Thank you. In terms of the priorities itself for these parcels, as one member, I really am focused on expanding our affordable housing inventory, and would love to partner with developers who have had experience building affordable housing projects or below market rate projects. At the end of the day, though, it's not something that I would want to see us really being in the business of managing the property. So I'd like to see a reliable partner that can handle that sort of opportunity. Certainly am mindful of the concerns of the tenants, particularly the food pantry. I think that's something that's an organization that has provided valuable service that we can all recognize, and if there are opportunities for them to relocate elsewhere, and we have the available space for that, we'd love to explore that. But at the end of the day, I envision these parcels being utilized for affordable housing. The other thing that I guess I wanted to inquire is if it would be feasible for this to potentially be an opportunity to address the situation, the looming situation over at Sunny Hills Apartments, establishing an alternative location for residents to reside there in the face of potential displacement. So those are my questions, but I think at the end of the day, I addressed the priorities already, which is affordable housing for me. Feel free to touch on that at any point.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fan. I like it a lot. Next up, we have Councilmember Dominguez.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for the time. And thank you so much, staff, for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions. I know that this has been something that has been in conversation, it sounds, for a while. And I know as one of, not the newest, but one of the most recent members, that including Councilmember Chua, I know we probably have not been here for the depth of conversations leading to this point. So personally, I would like to see more community engagement. I feel that personally, we gave out, this is definitely a very important study session, but I do want to acknowledge that special meetings are hard on everybody. And so I'm not too sure why we had a special study session on this when I feel we could have just put it as part of a council agenda. That's my first recommendation in the future is let's try to maximize all of our city resources because it takes a whole production to do special meetings. And so I want to be very mindful of that as we move forward. I do understand there's a timeline. It seems like August of 2022. So I would like to have a more robust community engagement to see what is the thoughts, especially of folks that live around this area. In terms of the pillars of priority, for me, it's definitely ensuring that displaced community members, such as those in Sunny Hills, have equal opportunity to move into if this is what we need to do because of the constraints that are before us. The second would be definitely providing affordable housing and first-time home buyers programs. So that's definitely a focus point for myself. It's really hard. It's really expensive to live in the city. And so many of us love the city, but we're getting pushed out. And so I definitely want to try to work with a developer that is going to help us accomplish that goal. The third pillar that I would like to get some focus on is really creating a unique project. I personally love the ag community that has been developed in Santa Clara. I know that took a really long time. There was a lot of conversations, but there's a great sustainable piece that is added to that development with the ability for folks to purchase a home and live in this development that really has enhanced their community and has been now seen as an addition to really increase the potential that community had. And so that's kind of what I would like to see in Milpitas because we do have some issues in terms of the parking. We have issues of people not being able to live in these developments that are created. We have neighbors that would love to address some of the issues and the concerns that they have had. Also, if there's an opportunity for this development to house nonprofit organizations, I think that would be great. So if there's some sort of mixed use that we could bring in nonprofits to maybe occupy some space and we could relocate individual agencies like the food pantry. Those are things that I would love to see as we move through these conversations. But I'm definitely going to hold my thoughts. I personally have also always followed the advice of my mother, which is never sell the land you own because it's really, really hard to get it back. And I also have friends who are in real estate who will completely give me the opposite advice, right? And so those are areas of concerns that I currently have right now is the parameters of how the developer is going to be selected, the process, what is that going to be, how transparent the process is going to be, and ultimately, if there's any member on this council that may have a conflict of interest, I definitely want to make sure that that's taken care of before a voting happens, because land is very, very hard to find in Milpitas. Personally, I think that they're assets and we will never get it back. So as much as we could get profit for them, that's definitely not something, at least as one council member, that I have seen work well in other cities. But I definitely am open to explore it. But again, for me, it's the community input, having those robust conversations and being part of them as well. So please, staff, if you ever have the meetings with developers or meetings, I know that there's Brown Act issues, but I would at least like to know, maybe get some minutes of what happened in these meetings, maybe get some minutes of the comments that were made. I just want to make sure that everybody has access to the information, from developers to the merchants that are currently and nonprofits that are currently located in these spaces, and definitely the community, because that's really, really important, I think, to all of us. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Councilmember Evelyn Chua.
Thank you, Mayor Tran. First of all, I would like to ask staff, what measures did we do to reach out to the tenants? Can someone from our staff answer this question, please?
I want to jump in as well with staff. I think from a elected official standpoint, there's, I know I, for one, and others in the past who are no longer on the council, we've met with our small business owners who are here, as well as our community organizer and resident of the Pines, Rose Riggs. And so, we've been meeting as of late, not so much, quite honestly, but, there's a time where we're really coming together pre-COVID to explore and discuss and to care and to have faith in each other. And we didn't come up with anything concrete, but I just wanted to share that, we have a relationship here in town. And I think a lot of folks are committed to each other. And so from an elected official standpoint, that's what we've done. Staff has kind of allowed or sort of encouraged for that to happen. It was more of a elected official driven support over the years. Neighborhood night outs and just all sort of times we've been together. But we'll check in with staff as well for any further notes on the engagement that we've been having. Staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I can respond to that. So this is our first session with council on the disposition of the 3 parcels. And so we haven't really engaged Councilmember Chua at this point, because depending on council direction and the recommended approach, I mean, there could be a scenario where parcel 1 is the only one that really has an imminent deadline. We do not have a time crunch on parcels 2 and 3. So what happens with that is uncertain at this time. So I think in the next couple of months, as we kind of shape a strategy forward, that's when more engagement and kind of the path forward will become clearer. And that's when we would be doing more outreach to the tenants. And if Sharon or Ethan want to chime in on that.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Councilmember Chua.
Thank you, Mayor Tran. That is good to hear. I also saw in your project plan that there is a meeting in October to reach out to all the tenants, and that's good to see.
That's good.
My other question is, it says on the fiscal impact that there's no fiscal impact. What do you mean by that? Because we hired a consultant to look at the the relocation options. And also we hired Ramey and Associates to do a site study of the potential housing capacity. Is that not included as a fiscal impact plus the staff time? Can somebody enlighten me on this one?
Sure, Councilmember Chua. So the fiscal impact is really related to the actions that we are asking from council today. And so there is no fiscal impact with kind of adopting the guiding principles or giving us direction. But you are correct that we have hired consultants to help us. And so the next time we come to you, we'll come with a more detailed discussion on all of the costs associated with the disposition, including that.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear.
Sure.
Okay, the way I see this initially at this point, without any other input that is provided, I see the use of this land, just like Mayor said, because by the nature of the acquisition of these lots, we are locked in to make sure they're affordable housing. They're developed for affordable housing. Even the use of the funds coming from the sale, if we do sell this land, that should be earmarked for affordable housing. Is that correct, Attorney Walsh?
It's correct that the land has to be, so the land in parcel 1 does either have to be developed as affordable housing, or we have to simply sell it and use the money that we get from the sale for affordable housing. As to the other parcels, we have to offer them for affordable housing, but we're not legally required to have those developed for affordable housing.
So that means those two parcels, 2 and 3, can be developed for-profit housing, correct?
That's correct. The one caveat that I would make to that is that if we offer them up and an affordable housing developer is interested in buying them, then we do have to negotiate with that developer for at least 90 days in good faith before we move on to something else.
90 days from what starting point?
90 days from the date that they send us a letter expressing interest in buying the property. So essentially we send out a notice, and then there's 60 days to respond to that notice.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we get a response from an affordable housing developer, I'm simplifying this a little bit, but if we get a response from an affordable housing developer, then we have to negotiate with them for at least 90 days in good faith. And if they make us an offer, we have to consider that.
Okay. Right now, I'm really leaning towards a combination of the affordable, like that was written here, even the very, very, very low income for the parcel 1, and also the affordable housing ones for parcel 2 and 3. That being said, what I mean is one master project for parcel 1, 2, and 3, or maybe a partnership between a nonprofit and a for-profit developers. That's what I'm looking at. Also, I like to go back to the key policies, meaning it has to align with our policy in terms of housing development, where it has to be vibrant and access to transportation is easy. There's entertainment. It's a mixture of, it's a little town within Milpitas, self-contained little town within Milpitas. That's what I'm looking at. And also there are 3. That's 1, vibrancy. Number 2 is meeting our housing goals, meaning the RENA numbers. It will satisfy it. And number 3 is high-end quality work environment. And that's what I'm looking at in terms of these 3 parcels in terms of development. I am open to having a mix of rental and at the same time ownership, if that can be done. And I'm also in, I'm also leaning towards the parks, having parks there, having, can I ask staff, okay, because this is like less than 3 acres, can you, when you say the option parcel pathway 2, it has that thing that has it has the housing, and the park. Well, how would that look? How big would that park be? Just estimate. I know there's not enough data right now. Would that be something like the Bob McGuire area?
I thank you, Councilmember. It's a good question. Chris from Ramey did the site plan. He can speak to the square footage of that park. I don't know how it compares to other parks in Milpitas off at this moment, but maybe Chris can at least give us a square footage range. Chris?
Yeah, so we studied a 5,000 square foot park with the parcels divided with 1 and 2 and 3 together. And with all parcels together, we studied a 10,000 square foot park, which is just under a 1/4 acre.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. So that's what I'm looking at, the housing, the retail, commercial, and the parks. Just a little community within our city. So I think that's it for me, Mayor, and looking forward for the next meeting with the input from, I also agree with Councilmember Dominguez about having input from our residents and also, of course, the tenants. I'm looking forward to those feedback. Thank you, Mayor Tran.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Councilmember Chua. Excellent work. I see a virtual raised hand by our Assistant City Manager, Ashwini Kantak. Ashwini.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was wondering if staff could bring up a slide just so we can make sure. We had a few questions that we had included in our report that we wanted to get feedback on. And then, Mayor, if possible, I'd like to just kind of sum up what we heard just so we are clear on the direction and the key themes. So if we can bring up the slide, I just want to make sure we touched upon.
A few comments.
So the first one is really related to land use, and I think we've described kind of what's planned for these parcels, and we haven't heard anything different. I think from council in general, it looks like high density housing is envisioned here, and that seems to be okay with the council as a whole. What target populations should this serve? I think we've heard feedback from various council members, and I can kind of go into that. So I think we did. Should the city lease or sell the land, or a combination of both? Again, there's been some mixed feedback on this one. So I don't know if council would like to provide any additional direction on this. And then any other input, which we already got. So Sharon and Adam, I just want to make sure that we've kind of received what we were looking for, and I can sum up some of the things we heard in terms of bringing back the next time.
Yeah, great job, Ashwini. Definitely we would love to hear more on the lease or sell, because as you mentioned, we have heard it sort of mixed feedback, and that does have a lot of impact on how we can look at the various impacts. So if there's any additional comments, that'd be great.
Thank you very much. And for direction tonight, based on the consensus, the majority of the city council, let me pause myself there. I want to take a moment here for our guests in the chamber. I see you both. I don't want to say your name too much. It's all over the airways. I don't want to put too much attention, but we do have our small business owner from Liberty's here. And we have our community organizer from the Pines here. I want to stop everything and let you both know that we care about you so much. The city of Milpitas has heart, and we're going to work through this together. As you know, Liberty's is located in Parcel 1, and we're mandated by the state of California to sell it. The city of Milpitas has no choice. We have to sell it. And so that's where we are together, absolutely like we have always been. And so we're going to work together through this in the coming weeks and months, and we're going to figure out something to take care of our Milpitas family. So I do want to state that we have no choice but to sell it, Parcel 1, and that's where Liberty's is at. So, but yeah, Rose, yes. Yeah, you can speak from there. Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe. Do you mind using the microphone for folks to hear you? I know it's safety. I don't want to risk your safety. You just use your mask and.
For part of the part I can.
Okay.
For me personally, so far, I know that you guys are obligated to sell this.
Mm-hmm.
This one, touch anything.
It's already hot. Business owners.
She doesn't want to use that one? Is that what's touch anything? She doesn't even want to go to there, but she wants to not wear her mask either. So nobody can hear her. I don't want to whisper.
But our business owners, Bertie's he's been there for about 50 years. The majority of them been there about 25, 26, 27 years. So they should be considered heritage businesses. They should be treasured here in the city. And they really need your help. If they can't stay there, then you've got to help them move and stay in Milpitas, because this is where they want to be. And to force them out with all the construction that's going on, Milpitas is becoming a better community. And you're building homes on thousands of cars on a number of streets. They just got anything to do. Once our environment is such where people can get back to there'll be traffic jams. But these businesses really need to stay here in the city. I'm really hoping that there's no Mickey Mousing going on, but where there's lots of traffic. We'll know that you're planning to build, probably able to Main Street. There's probably a mile there, Main Street, and that's probably going to be 100. He should be included. Their business back into. I mean, these are important people. They hire people, there's employees, they pay taxes, they buy stuff. They're functioning even through this COVID. They're still functioning. Not apart right now. They need to be supported. Housing and everything. Personally, I think you've met the need. Up and down Montague, all the side streets. I mean, it's probably thousands of apartments. So these particular properties, I think you're wasting your time. It should be solid. Maybe make it 2 stories high. And it could live up, I mean, the owner could live above their property. And leave them as businesses. And with all the homes around, I mean, people can see in. They can see. That's my personal opinion. This should be maintained as business. All of Main Street should be commercial, not residential. Because people are driving up and down, all they see is apartments, so then they leave town to go to the shop that they want to go. I think the city is doing itself a disservice. Thank you very much. My opinion. What do you think you guys need to rethink? Work with the state if you have to. we've got to consider keeping businesses because so many of them are leaving.
Thank you very much, Rose. We appreciate you. And I look forward to meeting with you and the business owners to have this conversation now that I think today have this hard deadline we're going to work on for this property. So thank you very much for your comment. We're going to meet very soon, like within a week, if not this week. So we got a lot to talk about. Okay, back up here for the direction. Based on the consensus here, and we'll take some comments as well from the dais and wrap this meeting up after we get everybody's input. But I'll go ahead and kick off a sort of round two of this discussion. Hopefully the final one tonight. We will be meeting again for this item. So the consensus is to, from what I hear, sell this property to the real estate market and really to the highest bidder. I think the goal here in a balanced way is to get the most value out of this land for every square foot so that it can go back to the city. This is a real estate investment of the taxpayer. And so the taxpayer would love to see the maximum return. At the same time, I do want to open it up. I know I talked about 100% affordable housing, and I do think that's a tremendous win, but I want to keep sort of the options open for our city staff, our city manager, to look at every type of land use, see if there's other square footage that could be of equal or more value. I do think economic development is something I strongly support, and that is an industrial or commercial zone, which I do care about deeply here in Milpitas. So after listening to Rose, I do want to keep the door open for our city staff to look at other land uses there. If the maximum value is comparable or more, who knows? I don't know. We'll let the real estate professionals take care of that. That is the consensus from what I've been hearing tonight, is to sell the property as we're mandated to, but to sell all of them together as one, selling all three parcels as one parcel to maximize the value. And so I think that's my takeaway for this address here in the city of Milpitas. And I look forward to further discussion for it. Next up, we have the Vice Mayor, Carmen Montano.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick. This is not an action item, right? It's just informational.
Yeah.
Okay. So since it's informational, thank you for the guests that came to City Hall and to make your comments. And what brought to my mind was helping the tenants relocate or helping them in some way. I'm not sure how, but I would like to propose that we use ARPA funding, since we do have a fund to help the small businesses to assist them in their needs. So that's my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Absolutely, to assist and do our best for our small business community. And we know it may be challenging, but we're in it. We're in it. Okay. Just going to go one seat at a time. Consistent as earlier. We'll go next, Councilmember Fan.
Thank you. A couple of things that I guess I didn't get to or forgot to address earlier. For me, I think Parcel 1 is okay as a standalone project. I don't. I see a lot of unintended consequences with doing an assembly of the parcels in addition to Parcel 1. However, the remaining parcels, I'm open to the idea of a assembly of the lots. I want to reiterate my preference for residential use, primarily for low-income housing, affordable housing. And I don't have much preference for retaining any commercial footage. However, I'm not opposed to that either. The other thing that I would request on top of the asks for community input, I'd like for some housing organizations to be a part of the conversation. There are several in the local community. Would love for them to just be part of the table, part of the conversation. Organizations such as Silicon Valley at Home or the Housing Trust. I'm sure there's more that I don't have off the top of my head, but I think it's important for them to highlight all the potential that can come out of these lots, particularly as it relates to their work in other municipalities. Let's see what else was there. I think that's it on my end. Thank you everyone for the conversation.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Councilmember Dominguez.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I definitely appreciate this insightful conversation, but I definitely wanted to be very clear that I'm not in support of high density in this area. I think that we need to have that conversation. I can't make a decision yet because I've not heard from our stakeholders, which are the people that live around here. I definitely want to make sure that I get their input before I move into any decision making, which I know this is just an informational, but I did hear some comments. And so I just want to be very clear that I'm not in support of selling this land. I know we have to for parcel 1, it sounds like. Doesn't sound like that's something we need to do for parcel 2 and 3. I also echo the sentiments of Councilmember Fan in terms of really speaking and bringing the nonprofit organizations that do specialize in housing in this region to get their input. So I think that's really, really important. And again, I definitely want to stress the process. I want this to be a very transparent process. I do not want a special last minute meeting for it. I think it's really important for our community and for ourselves on this dais to understand, again, the selling of land is an asset. And so it's an asset we will not get back. So I want to make sure that that's what we're going to get our maximum investment back, but it's also going to be an equitable process for those who are interested. And so I'm very concerned right now about that. And again, I am going to stress that there is a conflict of interest with anybody on this dais in terms, if you work in real estate or whatnot. I think that's a very important topic that I would like to learn more as one council member, because again, it's land, it's assets, it's taxpayers' money. And these conversations, I feel, should have really happened before this meeting. If we're going to bring staff together and we're going to talk about this, I really wish that in the future we have that input from the community, from our business community, the notes of prior meetings, not just 72 hours, because, the attachments are given on Fridays. And so for working class members like myself, I'm not just talking about council members, I'm talking about community members, for them to get notice on Friday, get this report, and get the PowerPoint. I got the PowerPoint today, which I know is just a replica of the report, which is totally okay. I did read the report and all the documents that when they were released on Friday night, but it's really hard to get to our community over 2 days. And so I don't see that's adequate outreach. So therefore, I can't make a decision in terms of those questions that are before me, because I haven't talked to the community about this, and it's just, we haven't had the time. And so I just don't think that's in the best interest of those that I represent, at least one council member. I take that part very, very serious. And so I just want to be very clear that I'm not part of the majority. I don't want high density. I'm not okay with selling this parcel. I think we need to explore first-time home ownership and really create a very unique and vibrant community, as Councilmember Chua said, but definitely explore some of those other developments that I have seen in other cities that do bring a value to that area. So I just want to be very clear on where I stand with that. And so thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Councilmember Chua.
Thank you, Mayor Tran. I just want to reiterate that I'm in for mixed use, and that means, you know, commercial, and residential all in one. Also, I would like to ask the city attorney, Attorney Walsh.
Yes.
Hi. Is there, because right now the bottom line is we cannot use partial one for any other than affordable housing, and that's a given, correct? And it has to be sold.
So I just want to be clear on that. With parcel one, we do either have to develop it for affordable housing, or we sell it and we use the money for our affordable housing project.
So
whatever the person who buys it, they can do whatever they want with it.
Oh,
you know, I mean, they'll own the property and they'll be subject to our zoning and land use requirements and everything, but they could keep using it as it's being used right now. They could have a new development, whatever they want to do. The important thing for us in that situation is that we get the maximum return so that we can use the money for affordable housing.
I got it. It's clear now. Thank you, attorney. So that being said, because we're coming up with several options, and Attorney Walsh, is there a way legally to say that we can give the tenants first right of refusal? Would that work?
Well, the tenants they're commercial tenants.
Right.
Do you mean first right of refusal to purchase a property?
Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm just thinking aloud. Is that legally possible?
Well, I would have to get a little more detail on that, potentially.
Okay, I think that's, so I'm looking at staff, look into that as well.
Councilmember Chua, if I could just ask Attorney Walsh to clarify. So if we're going through the Surplus Lands Act process for 2 and 3, doesn't it first go to affordable housing developers?
No, I think it's more on the parcel one.
Okay.
Because we have to sell that. What I was thinking is we have to put some conditions there. I'm just thinking aloud because this is so brand new that if we give the tenants the first right of refusal, they can develop the property and still maintain their commercial use with residential above or whatever. So that's my thought.
Maybe Councilmember Chua, if we could have, Mayor, if we could have Ned Thomas, our planning director, weigh in on land use. Ned.
Oh, there we go. Had my pirate eye shut. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Very interesting conversation about these parcels. At present, the parcels are included in the Midtown Plan, and they, as we have discussed with you in previous study sessions regarding the Metro Plan, the Metro Plan that will be presented to you does anticipate annexing them into the metro area. So they'll shift from one specific plan area to the other. For at least the past decade, when the current transit area specific plan, the task plan, was adopted, these parcels have been zoned for and envisioned for a higher density residential development. And we have seen that type of development happening on both to the south and to the north, as was shown in the earlier presentation. The core project, which is now identified as Mill on Main, was approved by the council 3 years ago. And that's to the north, where Able and South Main Street come together. And then to the south, of course, we have the Senior Lifestyles senior housing project, which was completed last year. So we're not looking, or the plan does not envision large residential buildings like the ones that you see along Great Mall Parkway, but it does envision buildings like the ones that you have seen again to the north and the south, as I've described.
So it is zoned residential right now.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not one of your special neighborhood commercial mixed use one, the one that was that we created a new zoning one for the new general plan, the updated one.
No, these parcels actually didn't change again, and under the they're currently under the Midtown plan, and they've been designated for higher density or multifamily residential for a number of years.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, so that helps my thoughts. Okay, thank you, Director Thomas and Ashwini, and also Attorney Walls. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor Tran.
You're welcome, Councilmember Chua. Thank you so much. I want to take a moment to do a time check. And about 7:12, we will be meeting about this item again and again. It's an important one. I'm glad we're having a special meeting tonight so that it allowed for our community members to be here at a decent time of the night. Here coming in at 5:30, it really helps, folks. So 7:12 right now. I think we're all wide awake, and it really helps for folks like our community members rather than them being here at 11 o'clock at night. So our city is taking moves and steps to accommodate our great residents. It's pretty exciting. You know, I think this being in the Midtown specific plan right now, for now, it allows for the city council right now to have more local control. I think our city council here will be working on the Midtown plan or the gateway, that the specific plan there here during this term. So it'll be nice to see how we can really continue to shape this address. I want to go to the direction of the council, the consensus of the council, but I do see a virtual raised hand from our Building Safety and Housing Director, Sharon. Sharon, did you want to chime in really quick?
Yes, if I may just provide one clarification, and Ethan, feel free to expand on that. So for Parcel 1, what the redevelopment law requires is that city must initiate development or dispose of the land by August 2022. And I know we've been talking about the option of selling it. And as far as the development option, the city would need to initiate development activities on the parcel. So the goal would be for the city to select a developer and have a disposition and development agreement by August 2022. So I just wanted to provide that clarification about Parcel 1. And Ethan, please feel free to expand on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sharon. I think that should suffice for tonight. All right, here we go. Bringing it back up to the dais. I want to wrap this meeting up. The conversation for this item will continue, but tonight we need direction based on the consensus of the council. We are looking to sell all three parcels together. We must sell, or else we'll lose Parcel 1, that's for sure. We'll just lose it. No revenue, no money, zero. So yeah, that's the consensus, to put all three parcels together, package it up, and sell it for the most money, the highest bidder. I like to give our city staff options. I know the consensus is to go with 100% affordable. I think that is the highest value you're going to get for the land based off of residential. And so I'm not opposed to that. I think that would probably be the priority, but it'd be interesting to explore what type of other land uses, economic development, how much money we can get for that. I think keeping our options open is just doesn't hurt. So if the council can entertain that for me, I do support affordable housing 100%. I'd like to just keep that window open to see what other interest there is for that location. If there's no opposition, I like to have that as the consensus of the council for direction. And then, as mentioned by the vice mayor, very important, must be stated, we will work with our tenants to do something, which is our best. And I look forward to meeting with everybody. We're getting back together, vaccinated. Okay, great. Everything sound good, Councilmember Chua? Okay, great. It's nice, kind of short and simple tonight. We will be meeting about this again, and I'll be happy to have another special meeting to accommodate our residents, our actual residents who I would, we've been through just so much time together. I wouldn't want you to be up here at night late, especially during these colder months. So I'm happy to give my time. City manager, is there anything else we may need?
No, Mr. Mayor. I think what I've heard is not just the idea of selling, but we also heard a lot of input on some guiding values that we'll also incorporate from all the council members, the ones that all make sense together, and that's what we use to bring something back to you.
Okay, great. That's the direction. I think that's all we need to do. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I'll come down here and talk. I'm so happy to see you. Just not under these circumstances, but hey, great meeting, everybody. We did under 2 hours. Great job, city staff, and we'll be back at it next Tuesday. This meeting is adjourned.